Top 10 Worst Nazis. Number 10. Josef Kramer. In December 1944, Kramer was transferred from Birkenau to Bergen-Belsen, a camp expanded to serve as a convalescent depot for the ill and displaced people from across Northwest Europe. Although it had no gas chambers, Kramer's rule was so harsh that he became known as the Beast of Belsen. With the collapse of administration and many guards fleeing to escape retribution, the inmates were left to their own devices. Corpses rotted everywhere, and rats attacked the living too weak to fight them off. Kramer remained even when the British arrived to liberate the camp, and took them on a tour to inspect the scenes. Piles of corpses lay all over the camp. Mass graves were filled in, and the huts were filled with prisoners in every stage of emaciation and disease. He was convicted after the war, and hanged in Hamelin prison. Number 9. Ilse Koch. In 1937, Ilse Koch came to Buchenwald when her husband Karl Otto Koch was made commandant. While at Buchenwald, Koch engaged in a gruesome experiment when she ordered selected tattooed prisoners to be murdered and skinned in order to fashion lampshades and other items from their skins. Her sadistic actions gave her the image as the concentration camp murderess. Ilse Koch remained at Buchenwald until 24 August 1943. She was arrested after the war and sentenced to life in prison. She committed suicide in 1967 by hanging herself. Number 8. Herrmann Göring. Göring was a veteran of World War I and was the head of the Luftwaffe and founder of the Gestapo. He stole millions of dollars worth of Jewish art and amassed a personal fortune. After helping Adolf Hitler take power in 1933, he became the second most powerful man in Germany. In July 1941, Göring issued a memo to Reinhard Heydrich, ordering him to organize the practical details of a solution to the Jewish question. By the time that this letter was written, many Jews and others had already been killed in Poland, Russia, and elsewhere. Göring was the highest-ranking defendant at the Nuremberg trials and was sentenced to hang. However, he committed suicide by taking cyanide the night before his hanging. Number 7. Joseph Goebbels. Goebbels was known for his public speaking and deep anti-Semitism, which led to his support of the extermination of Jews in Holocaust. After the Nazi seizure of power in 1933, Goebbels' propaganda ministry quickly gained control over the news media, arts, and information in Germany. He was particularly adept at using the relatively new media of radio and film for propaganda purposes. As the war drew to a close and Nazi Germany faced defeat, Magda Goebbels and their children joined him in Berlin. They moved into the underground Vorbunker, part of Hitler's underground bunker complex, on 22 April 1945. Hitler committed suicide on 30 April. In accordance with Hitler's will, Goebbels succeeded him as Chancellor of Germany. He served 1 day in this post. The following day, Goebbels and his wife committed suicide after poisoning their 6 children. Number 6. Adolf Eichmann. Adolf Eichmann was one of the key architects of the Holocaust, responsible for the logistics of transporting millions of Jews to concentration camps. Born in 1906, he joined the SS and quickly rose through the ranks. Eichmann orchestrated the mass deportation of Jews from across Europe, sending them to their deaths in extermination camps. Although the Jews had heard of Eichmann and the horrors he could carry out, he learned Hebrew to manipulate them into an agreement to the mass deportations. After the war, he fled to Argentina, but in 1960, Israeli Mossad agents captured him in a daring operation and brought him to Israel, where he was executed by hanging in 1962. Number 5. Ernst Kaltenbrunner. Ernst Kaltenbrunner was one of the top SS officers in Nazi Germany. Born in Austria in 1903, he joined the Nazi Party in 1932 and rapidly rose through the ranks. In 1943, he became chief of the Reich Security Main Office, taking over from Reinhard Heydrich, who was killed by partisans. Given the authority to destroy any enemies within the Reich, Kaltenbrunner played a key role in the Holocaust, overseeing the Gestapo and the extermination of millions of Jews and other minorities. After the war, he was captured by American troops in 1945, tried at the Nuremberg trials, found guilty of war crimes and crimes against humanity, and executed by hanging in 1946. He was the highest-ranking SS man to be hanged. Number 4. Franz Stangl. Stangl was born in Austria and was a commandant of the Sobibor and Treblinka extermination camps. In 1940, Heinrich Himmler gave Stangl an order to become the superintendent of the T4 euthanasia program. This program was for mentally and physically handicapped people to be killed. Stangl once admitted that he had grown accustomed to killing Jews. He did not see prisoners as humans, but as cargo, something that begun when another Jew asked how to dispose of the garbage when talking about other dead Jews. Stangl ended up escaping Germany after the war and was arrested in Brazil in 1967. He was tried for the deaths of 900,000 people and was given a life sentence. He died in prison of heart failure in 1971. Number 3. Friedrich Jeckeln. One of the most notorious figures of the Holocaust, Friedrich Jeckeln, orchestrated some of the most horrific massacres during World War II. Jeckeln was in charge of one of the largest collections of Einsatzgruppen. He alone was responsible for over 100,000 Jew deaths, as well as the murder of Slavs, Roma, and other undesirables of the Third Reich. He developed the Jeckeln system for mass murder, which was used in operations like Babi Yar and the Rumbula massacre. At Rumbula, Jeckeln watched on both days of the massacre as 25,000 people were killed before him. Jeckeln proved to be an effective killer who cared nothing about murdering huge numbers of unarmed men, women, and children. After the war, he was tried and hanged in Russia on February 3, 1946. Number 2. Oskar Dirlewanger. Dirlewanger was a veteran and led the SS Dirlewanger Brigade, made up of some of the worst, most vicious criminals in the Reich. He raped two 13-year-old girls on separate occasions in the 1930s, ending up losing his doctor title after being imprisoned. He volunteered for the SS when World War II started and eventually was given his battalion. His unit was in charge of the operations against partisans in the Soviet Union. It is believed he and his soldiers tortured, raped, and murdered civilians, men, women, and children alike. It is also said that he fed female hostages strychnine and made soldiers watch them die for entertainment. Dirlewanger was captured in a French hospital, sent to Poland, and tortured for several days. He ended up dying on June 5, 1945, from the injuries he endured from the Polish guards. Number 1. Paul Blobel. Blobel was in charge of Sonderkommando 4A of Einsatzgruppe C during the German invasion of the Soviet Union. Following the troops into Ukraine, the Einsatzgruppen would have the responsibility of liquidating the political and racial undesirables. One of the main massacres Blobel was in charge of was the Babi Yar in Kiev, where there were almost 60,000 executions. At his trial, he admitted to having killed 15,000 people. He was sentenced to death by the Nuremberg Military Tribunal during the Einsatzgruppen trials and was hanged in the Landsberg prison on June 8, 1951. This concludes the top 10 list, but there were even worse Nazi leaders. Make sure to subscribe for the video on the worst of the worst.